You think you're suffering because you feel incapable of solving your problems. But what if the real reason for your pain is the opposite? What if the pain you feel is a sign that something within you is trying to awaken? Life doesn't break you because it hates you. It breaks you to reveal what has been asleep. Pain isn't proof of weakness. It's proof of evolution. And the deeper it strikes, the closer you are to transformation. Today, you'll understand why suffering isn't the end. It's the beginning of your true awakening. We live in a time where everyone tries to hide their pain. We've learned to put on a smile and say, "I'm fine," even when everything inside is collapsing. But the truth is, the pain you feel isn't a mistake. It's the path. Nietzsche said that suffering is the price of consciousness. Frankl proved that those who have a why can endure almost any pain. And Jung showed that within the shadow lies the seed of rebirth. Suffering isn't the opposite of life. It's life calling you to live for real. If you feel tired, lost, or empty, this video is for you. Not to tell you that the pain will pass, but to show you that it has a purpose. Today, we'll cross together through the territory of suffering. You'll understand why it destroys what is false and awakens what is true. Because pain didn't come to punish you. It came to reveal you. There's a kind of beauty that only blooms after pain. Nietzsche said that the tragic is not pessimism, it's depth. It means looking at life without romanticizing it, understanding that suffering isn't the end, it's part of the process. Everyone, at some point, is pushed into chaos. When everything seems to collapse, when nothing makes sense. And it's right there, at the moment when we think we're breaking, that something inside begins to be born. Pain, no matter how cruel it seems, is the beginning of transformation. Nietzsche's Dionysian spirit is the strength of those who learn to live without so much control. It's when a person understands that chaos doesn't come to destroy, but to teach. Just as a storm clears the air, pain clears what was asleep inside us. Instead of running away, we learn to dance in the middle of confusion. It's that surrender that awakens the true power of the soul. The power to keep going, even without understanding why. Nietzsche believed that art was the most beautiful way to deal with suffering. Because creating something, painting, writing, singing, building, is turning pain into beauty. It's when what once hurt becomes expression, and what once felt meaningless begins to take shape. Art is the way the soul finds to heal what the mind cannot explain. And every person, in some way, can be the artist of their own pain. They just need the courage to face it and transform it. Pain is the price of consciousness. Those who try to avoid suffering also avoid their own growth. It's like a block of marble that never lets the chisel touch it. It remains whole but without form. Suffering is the strike that reveals the hidden sculpture. It's harsh, but it's real. Life will carve us until we discover who we truly are. And perhaps it's exactly through the cracks that the light finds a way in, and the spirit begins to awaken for the next phase of the journey. There are pains that seem to have no meaning, and that's exactly what makes them almost unbearable. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps, said that a human being can endure any suffering, as long as they know why they are suffering. When pain has no purpose, it turns into despair. But when we understand that it's shaping us for something greater, its weight changes. From punishment, it becomes a path. From burden, it becomes strength. Frankl discovered this by living through the unthinkable. He lost everything: father, mother, siblings, and wife in the hell of the Nazi death camps, lost his freedom, lost his name, but kept one thing no one could take: meaning. That was what kept him alive when so many gave up. He quoted Nietzsche when he said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." And that's one of the hardest and most liberating truths of life. Suffering that has meaning purifies. Suffering that doesn't destroys. It's not the pain that kills us. It's the void it leaves when we don't know what it's for. We all face this void at some point. When we lose someone, a dream, a direction, and it's easy to think it's over, that there's no reason to keep going. But meaning doesn't disappear. It only changes place. Sometimes it's hidden, behind what we haven't yet understood. And that's why pain requires time. Because meaning, like a seed, needs darkness to germinate. What today looks like a hole may just be the womb of your new beginning. The void is the most silent pain there is. It doesn't scream. It corrodes. And the more we try to fill it with distractions, the more it grows. But when we stop running and look within, something changes. Pain begins to reveal what was missing. Purpose. When you understand the reason why you are going through this, pain transforms into direction. And that's when suffering stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher that leads you to the true meaning of existence. Every pain has a deeper reason than it seems. Carl Jung said that suffering is the way the soul finds to get our attention. When something within us is being ignored, it starts to hurt. And the more we resist, the louder it screams. That's why suffering isn't just life's punishment. It's an invitation to face what the ego tries to hide. Pain is the language the unconscious uses to wake us from the sleep of denial. Jung called this hidden part the shadow. Everything we are but refuse to admit. Our fears, anger, desires, shame. Everything we push under the rug of consciousness. But what's repressed doesn't disappear. It turns into symptoms, addictions, repetitions. The person thinks they're moving on. But in truth, they're just running in circles. And while the shadow isn't recognized, it will keep driving your life from behind the wheel. Facing the shadow is an act of courage. It's like diving into a dark lake within yourself, not knowing what you'll find. And even though it's frightening, that's where the lost parts of the soul are, the forces that can heal us. When you face what you've always avoided, something inside you begins to reorganize. The pain that once controlled you begins to dissolve. What was once weakness becomes strength. What was once fear becomes wisdom. The shadow, when brought to light, transforms into the energy of rebirth. Jung called this process inner alchemy, suffering as the fire that purifies, separating the gold from the impure. It's a slow, silent, sometimes lonely work, but it's the only one that truly transforms. Because those who don't face their shadows repeat their destinies, and those who integrate them are reborn. Every time we look at pain with honesty, something dies. But what is born in its place is far more real. It's the soul becoming whole again. The pain we feel in the body actually begins long before it reaches the skin. It's the soul trying to express itself, when words are not enough. That's why sometimes what hurts the most isn't what happens outside, but what breaks inside. Pain wounds the ego, not the body. It tears the illusion of control, destroys the masks we wear to seem strong. It's as if life were saying, now you'll have to be real. And that's where the process of transformation begins. Just as iron needs fire to become a sword, the soul needs suffering to become strength. Without the heat of pain, the inner metal cannot be shaped. And that's not punishment, it's alchemy. Life places us in the fire, not to burn us, but to forge us. Suffering is the furnace where character is formed, where essence separates from appearance. When the fire passes, you're no longer the same. You're more resilient, more sensitive, more alive. Suffering, when accepted, becomes power. Jung called this dark phase nigredo, the first stage of psychic alchemy. It's the moment when everything within us seems to dissolve. Certainties melt away, the roles we once played lose meaning, and the world seems to collapse. But what dies there isn't you. It's the character that no longer served. The ego screams, but the soul stays silent, because it knows, before rebirth, there is always collapse. It's chaos preparing the ground for a new way of being. And this work hurts, because it requires that we abandon what is false. The masks, the disguises, the characters. To suffer is to give birth to your own truth. And like every birth, it's made of blood, scream, and courage. But whoever crosses that dark tunnel discovers something that's never lost again. Authenticity. It's the moment when you stop being who the world wanted you to be and start being who you truly are. Suffering doesn't break you. It reveals you. There comes a moment when pain stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. After the chaos passes, something changes in the way we see. The things that once seemed big lose their importance. What once was small gains value. It's as if suffering sharpens the lens of the soul, allowing us to see what was always there. The essential. Pain destroys pride and awakens sensitivity. And only after falling do we learn the true meaning of compassion. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to finally find who you are. Pain teaches what life asks for in silence, and we pretend not to hear it, to feel the other. After suffering, you recognize other people's pain in their eyes, even when they try to hide it. Empathy stops being a pretty concept and becomes instinct. The wounded soul understands another's silence because it has lived in it. And that is one of the rarest gifts of suffering, the ability to see beyond appearances. But suffering doesn't teach all at once. It teaches slowly, in fragments, shaping our vision drop by drop. Sometimes it's a simple gesture that changes everything. A hug, a memory, a prayer in the middle of the night. And that's when you realize the crossing was never just about pain. It was about love. Pain breaks the armor that kept the heart from feeling. And when we feel again, we begin to see the beauty that fear once hid. The soul that has suffered learns to hear the silence of others. It learns to notice what isn't said, to offer presence instead of answers. Suffering doesn't just change who we are. It changes how we see the world. After the crossing, you never look the same again, because your gaze becomes softer, wiser, more human. And it's in this new way of seeing that awakening begins to be born, preparing the spirit to turn everything it lived through into creation. After pain fulfills its purpose, something new awakens. It's as if suffering opens space within us for a force that has always been there, but asleep. Nietzsche said that art is the most noble response to pain, and perhaps that's why so much beauty is born from suffering. Because to create is to transform what hurt you into something that touches others. It's giving voice to what once silenced you. And when pain becomes creation, it stops being a wound and becomes freedom. Frankl saw in this the greatest human power, the ability to give meaning even to what seems meaningless. He said that even in the midst of pain, a person can still choose their attitude. And that choice is what makes us free. It's not what happens to us that defines who we are, but what we do with what happens. When suffering is understood, it transforms into creative energy, a light that doesn't come from outside, but is born from the depths of the soul. Jung believed this was the final stage of inner alchemy, the moment when the lead of pain turns into the gold of consciousness. Symbolic creation heals because it reorganizes chaos. When you put into words, into art, into gesture what tore you apart inside, what was once a burden becomes meaning. It's the instant when suffering stops being a prison and becomes a portal. And what passes through that portal never returns the same. It comes back more whole, more truthful, more awake. Suffering is the fire that transforms pain into consciousness and consciousness into freedom. It makes you feel, makes you see, makes you live with more presence. When you understand this, you stop fighting pain and start using it as a tool. Suffering stops being the enemy and becomes fuel. And that's how true awakening is born. When what hurt you makes you create, and what destroyed you teaches you to build a life with soul. By now, you may have realized that suffering was never the enemy. It was the messenger. It was the way life found to wake you up. Pain doesn't come to destroy. It comes to reveal. It peels away the layers that fear created, removes what's false, and gives back what's true. Because it's in the midst of chaos that consciousness is formed, and in the midst of loss that the soul learns to see. Suffering is the fire that reveals the gold hidden within you, and it's in that fire that the soul transforms into light. But there's one pain we all face, and we haven't spoken of it yet. The one that comes when something or someone leaves. The loss that disorganizes the heart and changes the way we see love, others, and ourselves. This pain holds a silent power. It brings us back within, when everything outside seems broken. And that's what we'll talk about in the next video. About what happens when love leaves, and how that absence can become the beginning of a reunion with what's most real within us. If you feel like continuing this journey, in the pinned comments you'll find complimentary materials, reflections and readings that go deeper into these themes, for those who wish to understand themselves more fully. Remember to subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and comment on what pain, transformation, and meaning have already taught you. Because pain doesn't come to stop you. It comes to remind you that there's still life waiting to be lived inside you.